Go ahead. We're just introducing ourselves.
Okay. Hi again, my name is Zulma. I'm the Spanish interpreter. Hola, mi nombre es Zulma. Yo soy la intérprete para español.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jan Malik. I work in the Department of Resident Leadership alongside Simone.
Hi, I'm Simone Lane. I'm the BHA/RAB liaison.
Hi, I'm Amelia Perez. I'm coming from East Boston.
Hi, I'm Nicole Beckles. I am from East Boston, and I am also a RAB member as well as a Mass Union member. Thank you.
Phyllis Corbett, and I'm from Old Colony in South Boston, and I've been on the RAB for 20 years. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Concetta Paul. I live in Jamaica Plain and I am in a family housing development and I am also on the RAB.
Hi, I am Betty Ray Wade. I am a family housing member. I live in Commonwealth Development, and I am also a RAB member.
Hello, I'm Cameron Minuti. I am a tenant, I guess, of the Ruth Barkley Apartments, and I'm here to find out more and see what I can do to help.
Great. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Arlene. I live in Mixed Finance. I am also from the RAB.
Hi, I'm Cecilia. I'm BHA's Chinese interpreter.
My name is Jose Carvalho. I live on an old colony housing for 23 years.
Yes. Excellent. Okay, that's fine. She's also at Old Colony? Okay, great. Thank you.
Hi, so John Kane, Boston Housing Authority Operations, and worked with our Resident Advisory Board for a long time.
Hi, I'm Felicia. I live in the Ruth Barkley Apartments, 42 Harrison Archway.
Hi, Michael Deere, Ambrose Street Orchard Gardens, and just here to learn about the program.
Great.
Very good. Glad to have you.
Hi, I'm Maya. I work at the BHA. I'm new, so I'm here to learn all about the RAB.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sandra Fernandez, BHA Resident Leadership and Community Affairs.
Hi, everybody. My name's Tabitha. I'm also in the Resident Leadership Department.
And also outside and who will join us shortly is Elizabeth Aguilar from the BHA Resident Leadership. And
Hi, and we're just doing our introductions and just entered the room. If you could just say your name and where you're from.
Mina Carr, Washington Beach.
Welcome, Mina.
Arlene's here. Right here.
Oh, Arlene from Washington Beach. No, I'm Felicia and Arlene, what's her last name? No, Arlene.
It's okay. It's okay. So let me just, we've got a PowerPoint here for people to look at, both who are online and who are in the room.
You didn't do the Zoom.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're absolutely right. Thank you very much. And let me have the person who just reminded me that I didn't go to Zoom speak up and introduce himself to the room.
Yes, my name is Ron Johnson. I live at Alice Taylor Apartments. I've been on the RAB for 14 years. And thank you for you all coming out.
And next person who's on Zoom, I think there's a Miss Dos Santos.
Yes, that's Novi Dos Santos from Alice Taylor and on the task force.
Okay, and others who are on Zoom.
My name is Gail Williams. I live at Orchard Garden Estates. I'm also on the Orchard Garden Resident Association, and I've been at Orchard for 20 years.
Okay, And is there anyone else on Zoom yet? I know there might be others that might be joining us, but may be delayed.
There's a Denise, but she's got to unmute herself.
There's a need for who to unmute herself?
Denise Mitchell.
Oh,
There you go.
hi, my name is Denise Williams, and I am a resident of Lenox and Cadman. And I'm also not lives but I'm new to this, and I'm also running for this election.
Okay, great. And is there anybody else that I missed?
Yes, my name is Cleon Walker. I live at Lennox Camden Apartments. I'm here to learn more about the RAB program.
Excellent. Anyone else on Zoom?
My name is Nancy Martinez, and I'm the president of Charlestown Resident Alliance. I've been living in Charlestown for 30 years.
Okay, and thank you, by the way, for dimming the lights. It makes it easier for me to see who's up there. Are there any others? I know that Daisy is on as an interpreter, and I see other names that I might have missed. So if I missed you, please just speak up.
Say that again.
If I didn't, if you didn't introduce yourself yet and you're on Zoom, please introduce yourself.
My name is Zia Leonard. I'm just here to learn more about RAB.
Okay, and which development do you live at, Zia?
Oh, I'm just new to. I mean, when they sent me the letter, I just have to run for it. So
Okay.
So I
Do you know which development you're at?
right.
Okay, we'll figure that out. Is there anybody else?
No,
Carl.
but
Okay, go ahead.
go ahead.
All right, Carla Wirt. I'm the Vice President of the Charlestown Resident Alliance for the Tenant Task Force. I'm
Okay.
also, all right, go ahead, Max. Thank you.
Okay, and we just had some additional people come in the room right as we were talking to those on Zoom. Was there anybody else on Zoom that I missed? Okay, I'm going to go to those who just came in. I'm sorry to stick them right as soon as they walk in the door with like introducing themselves to the room. But if you don't mind, if you could just say, sir, your name and which development you live at.
My name is Jermaine and I live in Dorchester Center.
Okay. Do you know which site you're at? Which development? Okay, that's all right. That's okay. That's okay. We'll figure it out. Okay. Okay. And can you introduce yourself and what development you're at?
Oh, my name is Gloria Rivera,
la escucho.
Brighton Developing.
Right, in which development? Commonwealth?
Commonwealth.
Commonwealth. Okay, great, great. And there was one more individual. That's fine.
Keep going.
That's fine. I think I've got everybody then. So I'm going to start with the PowerPoint that we've got up on there, and I'm also going to be kind of following the outline that's on the table. So when you walked in the door, some of you might have missed it. There are some handouts that are on the table for some things that you might find to be useful for this. And so let me go to the second slide, please. So there are upcoming events that are going to be in this building both this week and then 2 weeks from now. So tonight is the kickoff for the RAB information events. And tonight is all about BHA public housing, family public housing. Then, and that includes BHA, what are called mixed finance family developments. Those are developments that used to be BHA family public housing that have been converted to other kinds of housing. So Orchard Gardens is an example of that kind of housing. Washington Beach is an example of that. Old Colony is an example of that. Then tomorrow, we're going to have a session that's all about BHA leased housing. And so that's for people who have Section 8 vouchers, who have mass rental voucher program vouchers, and who have city vouchers through the BHA but aren't in a mixed finance site. And so we're going to be going through similar information for residents there. I know there's at least one resident here tonight who's from the leased housing program. That's fine. The information tonight will be good for you.
Se oye un ruido detrás.
I'm sorry, what? Okay, so there's that. Then Friday of this week, but this time at 11 rather than 6, we're going to have a session that's for BHA elderly disabled public housing here. And that's for the BHA public housing sites that are designated for elderly or disabled families. So an example would be the Bellflower development in Dorchester, or the Tricia White site in Brighton, sites like that. And that can include mixed finance sites like Patricia White. Yes, I'm sorry? I didn't include all the developments, ma'am. So I know you're at Berkeley. You're in the right place tonight. You are correct. J.J. Carroll is another mixed finance elderly disabled development. That is absolutely correct. And so those are the 3 information events that we've got this week. And then 2 weeks from now, we're going to start to have the elections. And so the elections are going to take place right after Labor Day. So the first, and they're going to be in this room. And unlike the events this week, the elections, in order to participate in the elections and vote in the elections, you have to actually physically be here. You can participate in other ways, like if you're a nominee, you can give a speech over Zoom. That's fine. But if you're wanting to cast a vote, you actually physically have to be here for those events. So those again will be on Tuesday, September the 3rd at 6 for family public housing. Thursday, September the 5th at 6 p.m. for leased housing. And then Friday, September the 6th at 11 for elderly disabled public housing. And the public housing elections are a little different than the leased housing elections. And I'll talk about that in a moment. Was there a question that someone had? Okay, I'll go to the next slide. Okay, so what is the Boston Housing Authority Resident Advisory Board, or RAB for short? Well, it's something that the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, also known as HUD, and then the state housing agency, which has this long and complicated name known as the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, or EOHLC, each require all housing authorities in the Commonwealth to have a plan process and to have an advisory board made up of residents to advise it on its plan. And so that's existed since 1999 on the federal side, and it's existed
Se oye
for,
doble.
excuse me, for about 4 years.
Se oye doble.
The state side. If you're talking and like to somebody in the room, if you can mute yourself, that would be really good, because sometimes we can hear you in the room.
It's a translation problem, Matt.
Okay, thank you. So this is the 8th RAB that we're going to be electing this time around. The first RAB was elected in 1999, and the residents themselves were the ones who came up with the idea of having RAB elections. And so they all worked over many years to devise their bylaws. The bylaws got longer and longer, but they said, let's have a RAB where we have all 3 groups participate: family public housing, elderly disabled public housing, leased housing. And each of those groups has an equal share and an equal stake in things. And we're going to elect up to 10 representatives from each of those 3 groups and up to 10 alternates from each of those groups, if that many people want to run as members and alternates. And then they each select a chair, and then they each rotate the responsibilities for the group and take responsibility for the whole group. And the board members are usually serve for a 3-year term. The last RAB served for an 8-year term, but that was very unusual. That was COVID. And the other thing to know is that the RAB is a voluntary body. So you don't get compensation for being on the RAB. But what you do get is that the RAB has a budget. And so the RAB can fund some things through that budget. For example, they can fund light meals for their meetings. They can fund cabs to get people to their meetings. They can fund for people going to conferences that are all about resident participation, that sort of thing. And the RAB reviews and advises the BHA on various aspects of its programs. There's both a 5-year plan, which is due this year, and then there's an annual plan, and they review both the policies and the programs of the BHA. And they also have a progress report. So if they do a big 5-year plan and say, here's all the things we as the Boston Housing Authority plan on getting done over the next 5 years, then next year they say, here's what we got done, and here's what we didn't get done, and here's what we need to do better, and here's our really great stuff that we got done even ahead of time, and include that kind of information. And they include information about the capital spending at the different sites. So if you're interested in, okay, when are they going to get to the elevators at Ruth Barkley? Or when are they going to fix the flashing that we've got at my apartment? That's the kind of thing you would get from the BHA. You would see, okay, is it this year or is it going to be like 2 years from now? And what all else are they spending the money on? And any changes in BHA policy. So admissions and continued occupancy, that's a big one because that's all about how you get into public housing. That's about how you get transferred in public housing. Rent determination, big thing that's going to be happening this year because BHA has to make a lot of changes because Congress has told it that it has to make changes. And then Section 8 admin plan and any new proposals to develop a new site. So if, for example, BHA was to say, oh, we want to redevelop the Ruth Barkley site, they would need to come to the RAB about that kind of thing and say, here's the plan for what we're going to do for the Ruth Barkley site. Next slide, please. So as I said before, there are these 3 groups that participate in the RAB. And I talked before about what the mixed finance is. And then each of those 3 groups gets those 10 reps, and then they can choose their chairs and their vice chairs and so forth. And I think what I'd like to do is, I've talked about sort of the structure of it all under the bylaws and so forth, but I think I'd like to turn to some of the RAB members who are here to speak to what their experience has been. So I know we've got 2 people that volunteered to do that, Betty Ray Wade from Commonwealth and Ron Johnson, who's online. But I know we also have some other, and I'm sorry, and Concetta's reminding me that she volunteered too. But we also have others who may want to speak too. So let me first hand the mic over to Betty, who could speak briefly about, I'm sorry, yes? Okay, thank you. Thank you. I'll hold my mic. That's a better idea. Go ahead. Whatever, you can stand up, you can, yeah.
Hello, everyone. My name's Betty Ray Wade. And my experience with the RAB has been, I came to the BHA in 2007. I had never lived in a development before. It was new to me. I just felt lost. I didn't know anybody. I came in contact with a gentleman named Alex Dinesco, who was the ED back then. He filled me in on the task force and how they operate and how they help one another, how they help other tenants. And that, which is one of the reasons I went, he came to me, I guess someone sent him to me. My landlord sent it to me back then and said, this would be a great addition to your task force. So he grabbed me and he kind of coached me as I learned how to be a task force member. And then he went on to suggest that because we didn't have a representative on the RAB, he suggested that I join the Resident Advisory Board. I'm not sure who I got in contact with. I remember Alex Rosen asked me to speak to John Kane. I remember having a conversation with one of those two, and they gave me the go ahead. I visited the meeting, I joined the meeting, I became active right away. I think I was an assistant secretary or something back then. I worked with a lot of people. I've learned so much about the RAB. I really learned, what really helps me is I've learned about my rents, about other people's rents and how to help them with their rents. Just being a go-to for even the elderly people in my community, those who couldn't get out during the pandemic. It was a godsend that I knew some of you RAB members, and I was in contact with the BHA, and we could help those folks, as well as myself. I feel like I'm rambling on, so I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I've enjoyed my experience on the RAB. Mac McCray has been fabulous. He's always been my go-to. John Kane, now Simone, and all of you RAB members, thank you for helping me up until this point. Thank you. Have a good day.
Yep. So if you want to hand the mic on to Concetta, and then I'll call on Ron after Concetta.
Okay, so I want to really impress on the people who are here as to exactly what the RAB does. I know Mark has spoken about it and he will continue to speak about it. But I brought for you to see a copy of the annual plan. This is a small version. Sometimes it is much bigger. John Kane is the one who sends this out. This is what it looks like. This is, would you mind holding? This is what the annual plan, when BHA sends it out, it looks like. And this is our primary responsibility. The RAB is not like the regular LTOs to deal with like the more mundane issues, like if your elevator is not working or your pipe is broken or there's mold in your apartment. The mandate, I mean, of course, we can, talk about those things, but the mandate of the RAB, as Mark said, that it got from Congress, is to look at the BHA's annual plan when it sends it out, and the 5-year plan, to look at it and see what it does for tenants. So for instance, in terms, let us say they sent you a copy of it, and then there is a section, it says preferences. So what is BHA going to do? Who is it going to give preference to for housing? And so I just want to read a short thing to you. It would tell you, for instance, displaced Boston residents, okay? So now this is not a final copy, this is a draft copy, but anyway. For instance, they want to give preference to elderly households, or they say they want to give preference to immigrants. I'm just saying that. You could look at this and say, you know what? I don't agree with that. I really don't think BHA should be giving preference to elderly disabled people. And so I want to push back. And that is the role of the RAB, what the RAB is supposed to do. When Mark spoke about rent calculations, BHA might say, you know what? If you have 2 people in your household and each of them are making X amount of money, we want this percentage of money. We are going to calculate your income in this way. We want you to come every year. We want you to come every 5 years. Tenants could say, you know what? I don't agree with that. I don't want my rent calculated every year. I want to push back. Tell HUD, because BHA has to send this to HUD, and HUD wants our voices. So you can say to BHA, tell HUD, please, we do not want our rent calculated every year. We want it every 2 years. HUD might listen to you, but a lot of times they listen, they want tenant input. They may not, but at least you have an input. That is the annual plan. It's really, really thick. Everything is in all kinds of stuff in there. Everything you can think about public housing is in there. This is the document that decides which housing development is going to be redeveloped. The list is in there. If you really push back at BHA and you really, if a whole set of tenants push back and say, no, 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 they may listen to you. Who knows? Because they have listened many times to suggestions from the RAB. So this is really what the RAB is about. I don't want people, to not understand. This is what it is, the 1-year plan and the 5-year plan. I am very happy to be on the RAB. I mean, you really do learn a lot, and you do have, the most important thing is to have some say, to have a voice in the future of your housing. And that is the main thing about the RAB.
Thank you, Kasana. Ron, could you add to that?
Yes, my name is Ron Johnson. I'm at Alice Taylor Apartments, and I've been with the RAD for 14 years. I also been on the task force at Alice Taylor since 2009. That's about 14 years old also. Now, my experience on the RAD is I came here to the RAD to relate on certain issues. Like I used to be in maintenance in the housing complex. And I was there, I was a supervisor and everything. And I came to the board to talk about certain things that in your complex, there's certain things that aren't being done, and there's certain things that are being done and how they're supposed to be done. And I brought it to the RAD to let people know and relate to what I'm saying that goes on at my site could happen in your site too. That's the reason why I joined the RAD, because a lot of tenants, especially elderly tenants, they don't know. Some tenants don't know. And when you move into your apartment, they have certain guidelines where they say, you can't touch this because maintenance would come in and do it. If they stop doing it, then you have to let them know that they have to do it. To speak up, you come to your community meeting, and the community meeting, the person that's assigned to the RAB would bring that attention to the RAB and let them know. And then there's always a chance that there's another tenant that relates to that maintenance issue that has to be done. It doesn't matter whether it's another company is running the property at a Boston housing property. You still have the same criteria of problem. And when it comes to the 5-year plan or the 1-year plan, you also, the RAB people, they get copies of that. You can bring that to the attention of your task force, even though your president should be getting the 5-year plan and stuff and bringing it to your task force that's there to go over it and then talk with your precise site that the 5-year plan is supposed to work on, like doorbells, elevators in your site. The 5-year plan is in there, and then when they have an overall meeting, a community meeting with the tenants, they also will find out, because Boston Housing will show up. The managers at every site is supposed to show up at a community meeting. This is so you can do your voice. And I came here as a voice on maintenance and capabilities and understanding what your right is on your repairs in your apartment, how it's supposed to be done, and what it has already kept up. And you'll notice that things change, but the whole thing is that you're supposed to have a written documentation on what changes in your site, and if it's not being done, that's where you go to your task force to understand, to mention what's going on, and then from there, then you go to the RAD, and the RAD person that's assigned to your site will go to the RAD and explain it too.
Thank you very much, Ron. I'm sorry to cut you off a little bit, but I know we've got time to just go through things. But as we have more time, and I think the same thing, I know there are other individuals that are here that serve on the RAB currently. And if we had a little bit more time, I'd hand the mic around, but I think I will, for the interest of getting through the presentation, but we might have some more time where people can chime in, ask more questions. So let me move on to the next slide. So, and if we could minimize just the Zoom just a little bit, thank you. So this is about who could be nominated to serve on the RAB. So in order to serve on the Resident Advisory Board, you need to be a BHA public housing tenant or a BHA leased housing tenant. And you have to be an adult resident. So that means 18 years of age or older, or an emancipated minor. You have to be willing to attend meetings regularly. The RAB usually meets once a month, but the committee meetings might happen more frequently, or the officers might have extra meetings because they're talking about the budget or they're planning out the agendas for the upcoming meetings. And as of now, you can attend either in person or through Zoom. In the past, pre-pandemic, all of our meetings were pretty much in person, except if we had really bad weather. And we'll probably be continuing this hybrid arrangement for a while, but we have come back to being, we were totally Zoom at one point during the pandemic, but we've been meeting regularly at the Haley development over in Jamaica Plain as our regular site. And the RAB had decided that like the second Thursday of each month, like 6 to 8 in the evening was the best time, but each RAB gets to decide that. So as new people are elected, that group of people would like confer and say, we've set up the first meeting, but after that meeting, it would be up to the group to say, yep, we like that Thursday schedule, or nope, we don't like it, we want something different. And you have to be willing to participate in training, to follow RAB bylaws and ground rules, and share contact information. So that means it's a lot of flexibility. You're in a big group. There's questions of sort of like respecting other individuals. There's questions about not taking too much time so that all have a chance to be heard. There's issues about making sure that you deal with people professionally. Obviously, there can be things that people have strong feelings about one way or the other, but then there are questions about how to let those feelings out, but at the same time, be respectful to your fellow RAB members about things. Now, certain people can be disqualified from serving on the RAB. So if, for example, you are a BHA or a private manager or owner employee, it may be that your role is such that you really can't serve on the RAB because you're too much in sort of policy or decision-making role for that. So that would be one bar. I'm sorry, we just lost a slide. We can come back to the slide. Thank you. There is also, if you owe money to the RAB, you could be disqualified from serving on the RAB. That can happen. Or if you have been removed for cause from the RAB, that means that the RAB itself voted at some point to remove you, and it wasn't just because you missed too many meetings. So those are things to keep in mind. And we've got those in greater detail over on the list of eligibility criteria, but for the purpose of these slides, I think that's good enough for right now. Let me move on to the next slide. So how do the elections work? So this is the part where things are different for public housing and for leased housing. And so the one person who was here from leased housing, and maybe some more joined later, just be aware of the differences. So all the voting has to be done in person and at the appropriate election meeting. So if, for example, you figured out, I live in BHA family public housing, then you want to be at that meeting on Tuesday, September the 3rd at 6 o'clock here. If you figure out that you're in BHA elderly disabled public housing, you want to be here on Friday, September the 6th at 11 o'clock. If you are in leased housing, you want to be here on Thursday, September the 5th at 6 o'clock. And for the public housing, the way that this works is because HUD says that task forces, the recognized local tenant organizations, have a decisive role in selecting who's on the RAB. They are the ones who get to vote on who's on the RAB. So they don't choose who's nominated because you can nominate yourself, you can nominate other residents from your site, you can nominate other residents from the program, and as long as that person is willing to be nominated, that's fine. But then the actual vote gets done by the representatives of the LTOs. So take, for example, I'm just going to pick on her, Phyllis. Phyllis is from the Old Colony development, which is a family public housing development. And if Phyllis came with, they can have up to 3 representatives from the Old Colony tenant organization and 1 alternate. And they come here on the election day. They then get handed a ballot. And that ballot will have all the names of people who've asked to be nominated for family public housing positions on the RAB. And then those representatives from Old Colony, those representatives from Charlestown Resident Alliance, those representatives from Ruth Barkley, whoever comes to that election meeting that's from a recognized task force, circles up to 10 names. And then we figure out who got the most votes out of those people. And it's fine to have more than 10 people run. And in fact, we encourage it because if you don't get in that first 10 grouping, there's another 10 grouping that's alternates. And so that often happens. And I'm going to be talking a little bit later about how we try to spread things out so that things don't get concentrated at any one development too much. But that's how those elections go. For leased housing, on the other hand, basically, you show up here on the election night. If you are a BHA Section 8 or MRVP or city voucher tenant, you just get to cast your ballot. We will have the ballots of all the people who've, again, submitted their names who are willing to be nominees from leased housing. But anybody who's here that's from leased housing can get those ballots and circle up to 10 names, and then we do a similar count. For elderly disabled, we'll show you an example on the elderly disabled. I came up with a fake ballot on that, so you could see how that might work. Let me move to the next slide. So this is what the form is. It's called the Task Force Authorization or LTO authorization. It's the form that your local tenant organization completes. And they indicate on that, hi, we all met as a board at our development, and we decided which people we were going to authorize to come to that election meeting for us on September the 3rd or on September the 6th for us. And they list the names. You can have up to 3 representatives and you can have 1 alternate. The alternate is in case one of your people drops out. So you don't lose the ability to do a vote in case somebody does drop out. And then you need to complete those forms and get them to Mass Union of Public Housing Tenants by August the 28th. And you all should have been having contact from Mass Union about that. And I think I'm going to turn the mic over to LaShonda for a moment so she can speak to that.
So much, Mac. Hi, I'm LaShonda. I'm representing Mass Union of Public Housing, and we're a nonprofit that's made up by public housing tenants for public housing tenants. And so we've partnered with BHA to spread the word. So you might have gotten an email from me, you might have seen some flyers in your buildings, and you might have had a conversation with me about this process. So we are in charge of, receiving these forms, these delegation forms, or forms that where you would these are the folks that are going to be casting the ballots on behalf of the people who will be running for the seats to represent one of the 10 seats for the family housing, for the RAB. So I am here to support. So mass housing of public. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I'm a little nervous. So we are here to support. We can help with your oral statements. We can help if you have some confusion around the process. We can receive all of the forms tonight. So for those of you who are thinking about running for one of the 10 seats, if you have a nomination form, you can turn it into me tonight. If you're going to be casting a ballot on behalf of your developments, you can turn it into me tonight. And if you don't have it, just you can reach out to me. I'll be in the corner over here somewhere where you can just, tag me and I'll share my contact information with you. Okay. And if you have any questions, I'm here to help. Good to go?
And one thing I'll just add on the authorization form is it isn't necessary that the 3 people you designate actually are on your LTO board. Your LTO board could say, hey, so-and-so's a good person. She's a resident at our site. We trust her to cast the ballot for us, and we're designating her because it's easier for her to get out than it is for us to get out. That's fine. It's all we need to know, though, is that your board met and said, these were our 3 people that we were sending to come in and cast ballots. Next slide, please. So nominations, nomination deadline, nominee statement. So all nomination forms have to be in by the close of business, August the 28th. Go ahead. Yeah. No, okay. The nomination deadline is August the 28th. So there's a form that has to get filled out. We actually have some of those forms over here on the table that if you're interested in being a nominee, you need to complete that. And that form needs to get back to LaShonda or others by that 28th deadline. That's because we create the ballot based on those nominations that come in. We also double check names because sometimes mistakes get made. Somebody thinks, oh, I'm a BHA tenant, and they're wrong. They're a Section 8 tenant, but maybe they have their Section 8 through Metro Housing Boston. And people make those mistakes all the time. So we just want to double check that stuff before we write up the ballots. If you're nominating someone else, that person also has to indicate their willingness to serve and have their information checked. So you'll see there's 2 different forms of the nomination form. One of them is really simple. If you're nominating yourself, you just fill it out and sign it. And then you're saying, yep, I'm okay getting my information checked and I'm willing to run. If you're nominating somebody else, you need to make sure that person's willing to run and willing to serve and have their information checked. Because sometimes you may think somebody be great and they're like, I'm not interested in doing this right now. It's not a good fit for me. And that's fine. That happens all the time. And also we need to make sure that people are on the right ballot. So that's the family public housing, the elderly disabled public housing, or the leased housing. And as LaShonda was mentioning earlier, you have the ability to submit either a written statement of up to 200 words prior to the election or to make a speech of up to 2 minutes. The deadline on that one, while we would love to get those before the 28th, if we don't get those until after, that's okay. But we're really trying to get those in, particularly for the written statements. But oral statements are fine on the election events. So people can actually, and it may even be that you're not in the election meeting. You're away. You're not there, but you're on Zoom. And you're wanting to tell the people that are in the room at the election meeting, hey, here are all the good qualities about me and why I'd be great on the RAB. And you get the chance to talk for up to 2 minutes to explain that to people. as do anybody who happens to be in the room who also wants to give those statements. Or if it's a written statement, it'll be in writing, and probably one of us will read it out loud too, in case that's easier for people. And you don't have to be at the election event to be a nominee. However, only those who are there to vote can vote. So I just want to emphasize that again. Next slide, please. So this is the nomination form. Again, there are nomination forms over on the table. Nominate yourself, nominate another. Deadline the 28th. Get it to Mass Union, LaShonda. So I'll move to the next slide. Okay, this is an example of an election ballot. Now, we haven't finally decided what these are going to look like, glossy, whatever. So this is very rough, but I wanted to give you an example of how it might work. So this is one that's from elderly disabled public housing. And as you can see, it says at the top, only circle 10 names or less. If you circle more than 10 names, we won't know who you were really picking. And so that's a problem. But you can pick less than 10 names. For example, you may say, I'm really not familiar enough with X, Y, or Z people, so I didn't want to circle their names. I was familiar with like 8 people, so I wanted to circle their names. That's fine. You can only circle a person once. You can't make them have multiple votes on your ballot. There's no ranking choice. It's not like, here's my number 1, here's my number 2. They're all equal on the ballot that you sign. Now, the reason that I gave this as a ballot example is because you'll notice there are 11 nominees on here. So if all these people got votes, not all 11 of them are going to end up being regular members of the RAB. At least one of them is going to end up being the alternate because there are only 10 member slots. And then once you get to the 11th slot, it's an alternate. And I wanted to pick this one because in this particular case, you'll see that there are 2 places where there are 2 people from the same development. Bellflower has 2 people. And also we had, I think 2 people were from St. Potolf. And so I'll move to the next slide just to show you how that works. So this talks about what happens if 2 people are nominated from the same public housing site. So the RAB came up with this rule a while back. It was trying to scatter out and bring in as many developments as possible before you move to the second person at a development. So the rule of thumb would be basically the top vote getter at the development gets selected, and then you move through all the developments. In the particular example I gave you, there were 9 developments. So you would get basically up through number 9, and then you'd go back to figure out for 10 and 11. Well, it might be easy to figure this out because it might then be that the person at the runner-up at St. Potolf got more votes than the runner-up at Bellflower. And so then the natural thing to do would be then to pick the person from St. Potolf as your 10th person and your person from St. Potolf as your runner-up. But there are other ways it can get worked out. Sometimes there are ties that happen. And so when there are ties that happen, sometimes we'll turn to the group and say, what do you want to do? Or we may turn to the 2 individuals and they say, you know what? Between you and me, you take that member slot and I'll take the alternate slot. And that's tended to work out. So we've not really had big controversies about this, but I just wanted to explain how this worked because we were trying to get as many developments as possible onto the RAB before we got a second person on from a particular site. Next slide, please. So does the same thing happen with leased housing and with public housing. And this is less frequent because with leased housing, you tend to be scattered. You tend to be all over the place and people aren't all at the same site. Not true for mixed finance because that's a public housing site that got converted to Section 8. But sometimes you might have one big building that BHA has that's Section 8, where lots of people there are Section 8. If that were the case, then yeah, we might have the same kind of rule about runner-up. So I'll give you an example. One of our longstanding RAB members from Fenway, Mr. Lee, lived in a place called Moorville House, which is all BHA Section 8. And so if more than one person ran from Moorville House, you want to go through all the other places before you then take the second person from Moorville House. And then if less than 10 people are running in total, there's no issue having a second person from the site also be a member. We've had that happen in the past where we had like, you know, less than 10 people run, then that would be fine that the second person was serving from that site. Next slide, please. So what happens if there are less than 10 nominees from one of the three groups? So this has happened in the past, and it's happened even despite good meetings like this, where a bunch of people turned out and good outreach efforts, where one or another of the groups just like didn't end up having 10 people or 10 plus. That's fine. The RAB has a pretty robust system of adding people during its life. So let's say, for example, you knew somebody who wasn't going to be around for the time of the RAB elections or wasn't ready to run as a nominee, but wanted to check out more. What's this all about? They certainly could come to RAB meetings and attend them. And they might say at some point along, you know what, I'd really like to serve on that RAB now. And they normally can move up as usually as an alternate, because usually the slots may themselves all be filled. Or if not all the slots are filled, they could move up to a member position. And we've had many, many good RAB members who started as alternates, who then were regular attendees, and then who moved up over time. Because that's the way the RAB rules work, is that if you're a regular attendee as an alternate and vacancies open up, you know, it's a natural thing. You're around for a few years. Some people aren't able to do it for 3 years. They, you know, things happen in their family. They move out of town, what have you. Then people move up, and that's sort of a natural thing to do. And then I think the last slide we have on here is about our first meeting. So what the RAB has done is said, okay, we don't want you to be completely up there about when you would first meet, because we know that would be like impossible to schedule. So we've just gone ahead and scheduled when the first meeting is of the new RAB, which is going to be on the 3rd Thursday of September, September the 19th at 6 p.m. And it will be at Bickford Street at the Haley Apartments in Jamaica Plain. And at that meeting, then the RAB is going to be selecting new officers. They're going to be selecting members of their budget committee. They'll decide on their regular meeting times and place for future meetings. And they'll set their dates for mandatory officer and member trainings so that people can get additional backup information. Oftentimes we're giving people tips about how best to facilitate meetings, you know, how to deal with budget issues and handle a budget and those sorts of things. So I know I packed a lot in there. So let me stop here and see if there are questions that people have. Okay, yeah.
Thank you. 2 or 3 right off the bat.
Yep.
Can you speak a bit more about the criteria for meeting attendance?
Sure.
I want to be clear on that. I read it, but I want to be clear on that. Secondly, I'd like to hear from some of the prior members. I've heard the good things, but can you tell us about some of the bad briefly?
Okay.
There have been moments. And then thirdly, In terms of the election and not getting the quorum,
Mhm.
how does that work for the LOBs?
Okay, so, thank you. So for the first question you had, which was about, I'm sorry, I'm attendance. So if you miss 3 or more consecutive meetings without good cause, that's grounds for removal from the RAB. That's one thing. And then it's up to the chair to decide if there's good cause. It might be there was an illness, might be that there was a family emergency, things like that. And then we also have another criteria, which is I think you have to have attended at least 6 out of the last 12 meetings in the course of a year. That one got added because we had some people that had like very long periods where there was like very sporadic attendance, but they didn't have that 3 in a row thing. And so we imposed that one on people. And for the alternates, what we've said is basically alternates need to attend at least 4 meetings in the course of a year in order to then qualify to move up if there's a vacancy. So that's how that works. On the second issue, I'll wait and have the others speak to that. I could say my own opinion on that, but that one's better coming from the horse's mouths who've gone through that. And then on the third issue, which is quorum, we've actually not had that problem. You were talking about it for elections. There's actually not really a quorum issue about the elections. So we're going to see what happens. And if it turns out, like I said before, if it turns out that we get less than 10 in a particular constituency, one of those 3 groups, then we may do the mechanisms that we've done in the past to try to recruit people to get added in by other members. There is a quorum requirement for the RAB itself, which is 9 members. And we haven't had problems meeting that quorum requirement in a good while. We had it so long ago that I can no longer remember when it was a problem. But as to the good and bad things that happen, let's hand the mic over to others. And that could be Concetta and Betty, but it can also be others who are have been on the RAB currently.
Okay, so I would not say that there is bad. Now, it is not, one can say that there is no bad because there is always bad in everything, but we don't really have a bad in that there, of course, it's like every tenant association. There may be sometimes that personalities can come against each other, but we get over that. We don't consider that bad. If I had to look for something bad, I'd probably say maybe in terms of what we do, because we are limited by our mandate from Congress. So sometimes I wish that we could do more in terms of, uplifting tenants and doing more for tenants, helping tenants more. So we are sort of limited on that. And I wish that we had, more options to be able to do this type of things. I mean, we don't really have bad, just little, the regular little petty nonsense about, somebody come against somebody and this kind of stuff. But I mean, this way, we pass over that. We all look at all of us here tonight, interacting. We put that behind us. But policy-wise, I think it's the limitations. And that is why, there's another organization called the REC, the Resident Empowerment Coalition. I don't know what it has a new name now, I think. Anyway, it is more an umbrella organization for tenants, and they are the ones who are empowered to do what we cannot do, because I think the bad thing is that we are limited. We are sort of limited in our scope, and we sort of, in this box. So I think it, I see it as sort of a bad thing. I don't know if anyone has anything else to add.
So hi, I'm Nicole. Like Concetta, I wouldn't say we have bad things. We are residents. We have our own individual lived life experience. And when we walk into a room or we become members on a board, we are carrying our community responsibility as well as our own lived life responsibility. And sometimes we may clash, but this board, I have to say, we have always left a room agreeing to disagree on issues that we think are more personal to us. But we do sit and we do our community, our obligation that we signed up for as RAB members when it comes to making decisions that BHA need us as a board to do. We also partner with a lot of different organizations, like Concetta said, and sometimes because we can address something, we would refer you to like Mass Union, who is there basically to deal with tennis, GBIO, GBL, so we do send you where we know that that is an area that is specializing on resident issues as a LTO board, but we deal with, like Concetta said, we deal with stuff with BHA. Okay, any other questions, or does anyone else want to speak?
Well, basically, what I just wanted to add to that was, oftentimes the community will come in on our meetings and they don't always know what our ultimate goal is just, we have the BHA and they come with issues like their toilets broke and they're angry. They have real issues. And unfortunately, that's not something that the RAB handles at that moment or can do that deals with. But that does happen periodically, I would say. It doesn't have to be that their toilet is broken, but they have issues with their landlords. They're looking at us as community, as their RAB representative to be able to step in and help them. I feel bad that I can't say to them, this is what you need to do. But we do have groups like the REC. There are people who intercede and say, this is what you can do, this is what you cannot do, but that is not something that we directly, that's not why we were here, that's not why we were formed. But those are real issues, and I do wish we could do more when the community comes in and express their, whatever it is they're going through in their developments with their landlords and so forth.
Let me add something, but it's a good thing, is that we will refer you, most times somebody from BHA attends the meetings. So sometimes the person is there and they can tell you, call me, or I'll give you my email. And that is a good thing. Another good thing is that the meetings are open to the public. It's a public meeting like all city meetings. So you don't even have to be attendant. Somebody from California could be in Boston at the time and, walk in and attend the meeting or attend on Zoom. All the meetings are open meetings. It's not only for the RAB, it's for every LTO member, for every person, resident of Massachusetts or any state whatsoever. They are open meetings. So that's a good. So we have a lot more goods than bads.
Other questions? Yeah. Okay. Usually the schedule for that, we work out with the RAB at that first meeting. So John, for example, myself, usually we've had some other organizations get involved with those as well. And we say, okay, what dates are good? What evening should we do that? Usually we found that doing it in the evenings is best for people. And usually we've held those at the same place that we have our usual RAB meetings at Haley. But there's some flexibility on that if another site would be better. Usually the time period on that is like a 2-hour window. And we're both then covering like basic things like, as a RAB member, how do you interact with other RAB members? How do you respect each other? How do things work with motions and seconds and committees and chairs and things like that? And then tips for various officers about helping them carry out their duties. So that's most of the content. We will add things over time. And I know we've had a discussion about possibly having an amped up more of a training schedule on more detailed issues. We did a fairly intensive training about 15 years ago, I think it was, and where we did many sessions for the RAB, and we brought in people from outside. We brought in people from HUD. We brought in people from then DHCD to talk about different types of issues. And we certainly can do that again. And we will periodically do ones where it's like people want to get briefed on what's going on with rent changes or what's coming up with a whole plan for redevelopment. And usually on the RAB agenda, each one of the agendas usually has some staff member from BHA or from an outside organization coming in to present on something. So for example, Joe Bamberg, who's the Director of Real Estate Development at BHA, will come in and say, here's our plans where things currently are at about 10 different sites, at the Doris Bunty site, at Orchard, at Mission Maine, at Haley, and sort of go through that kind of presentation and then answer people's questions that they may have. Let me hand John the mic.
Just want to add one more thing just about the trainings. There's only one other mandatory training, and that is if you're an elected officer for the board. So if you're serving as the chairperson, the treasurer, or secretary, we have a mandatory officers training. And of course, we'll work with each of those elected officers in terms of the scheduling for that. And that training then would be open and available to the rest of the members, non-mandatory, just mandatory for those elected officers. Just wanted to come back on that. And then there was a question in the.
Yes, I have one. Yes, it's like, you say like 30 Bickford Street, because I saw that, when I was passed by there, I saw that, part of Mildred Haley's being torn down.
Yeah, so Mildred Haley is being redeveloped. So part of it's being redeveloped through a coalition of 3 nonprofit organizations, Urban Edge, the Community Builders, and JPNDC. And part of it is also being modernized by the BHA. So 1/3 of it is with that group of nonprofits. 2/3 of it is being done by BHA. So you're right that there are buildings at Haley that you see in construction, and you'll see other buildings that have been torn down. And that process is going to take a number of years. And that's not unique to Haley. That's going on at other sites. It's going on in Charlestown. It's going on in Mariel and McCormick. There's different levels of rehab at different BHA sites, like the St. Potolf site and the Fenway.
Another thing, is
Yeah,
like,
yeah, go ahead.
I used to live in Marion McCormick, and I
Yep.
know like, I know they just did not too long ago, did a Go Green operation. Like Go Green, you build the new bathrooms in that development.
Yep.
So why would you build new bathrooms in some places in that development, knowing that you're gonna tear it down eventually?
Yeah, no, I understand. And there's sometimes some work that gets done just to make life tolerable in the meantime. But for the long-term preservation of the housing so that it'll be good for 50 years into the future, it may be necessary to do a full rehab or in some cases, a tear down and a rebuild. And you're right, McCormick, there is a whole redevelopment plan that's going on there that's going to take quite a few years. But that's the kind of thing which Concetta was talking about before. People can have legitimate debates about, do we need to tear down this site? Should we rehabilitate it? If we're going to rehabilitate it, how long will people have to relocate for while the work is going on? Should this stay with BHA? Should it be going to a private developer? Those are legitimate debates, and those are the things that come up at the RAB all the time. Other questions? Yep. Oh, yep. Sorry, Shonda.
The one point that I failed to mention was that I do have nomination forms in other languages. So I do have Chinese and I have Spanish in case anyone is more comfortable filling it out in your primary language. Thank you.
Let me just see if there are any other questions or others who want to speak. I'm sorry, go ahead, Concetta. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I've been ignoring the folks on Zoom. I'm sorry. It's because the presentation is up there and I can't see the Zoom boxes. And I know I asked for that so that I could see what was in the presentation. But is there anybody that's on Zoom that has any questions or any comments that they want to make?
My only question is, well, not really a question, like comment that, you know, a lot of times, tenants, they have a lot of times the tenants, you know, when they're different, I'm not gonna say representative, well, how do you say this? When they are different clients or representative or people they're in office, it's hard for the tenants to know who's in office because they're always changing. So are they when we have the new group this time, would they be able to have interact with the tenants this time? Because a lot of times tenants do not know who's in and out coming in. Because a lot of times someone leaves and it's a new person in there, and then they don't know. Just like myself, sometimes I don't know who's new in the office all the time.
Okay, so you may be asking a question which has to do with local tenant organizations, but you may be asking a question related to the RAB. So as to
Yeah.
as to the RAB, what happens is once people are elected, there is a list of RAB members. Now, we generally tend to not give out contact information for those individuals. People share their contact information with each other on the RAB so that they can reach each other about a particular agenda topic that may be coming up or things like that. But the RAB does have an email address. And so if there was a resident who had a question saying, I want to ask about this, or I think this should be on your agenda, or I'd like to come to your next RAB meeting, when is it? All of that information should be available through the RAB email, and then the BHA RAB liaison should be able to get back with you and relay the information about here's when our next meeting is going to be. And we passed on that question that you had, and people can deal with it through the agenda. It's a little bit different with your local tenant organization. Each resident organization there has its own set of bylaws. It has its own election schedule, and that's more complicated. Any other remarks or questions that people have? I just want to make sure that those who are here that haven't filled out the LTO authorization forms or are interested in running as a nominee on the RAB have the chance to sort of catch up with LaShonda to get their paperwork done. So I'm going to put down the mic at this point and sit down.
Thank you, Mac. And thank you, John and Simone. Thank you, guys.